My son said he was paralyzed. He cried. He said he didn't want to be a burden. I believed him. I paid for everything. Nurses, therapies, medicine, until one day I opened the door to his mansion and I saw him dancing, laughing with my money. If you're listening to my story, subscribe to William's Revenge Stories right now. We tell stories here that will make you question everything you thought you knew about your own family. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Nathan Morrison. I'm 68 years old, and I'm not here to cry. I'm here to tell you what I saw, what I discovered, what made me understand that sometimes the person you love the most knows exactly how to stick the knife in. On September 23rd, around 10 at night, I parked my truck 2 blocks from my son's house in Galveston Bay. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't call. I used the key I always had. I opened the door, and what I saw inside made me never want to trust anyone again. There was music, not soft music, music that vibrated the walls, colored lights flashing like a nightclub, the smell of expensive perfume mixed with spilled whiskey and laughter. So much laughter that it echoed through the house like mockery. In the center of the room, with a crystal glass in his hand, moving his hips to a song I didn't recognize, was Tyler, my son. The one doctors said would never walk again. He was dancing like he had never been in a wheelchair, as if the last 6 months had been a damn movie that I paid for, not knowing it was fiction. Beside him in a tight red dress was Samantha, the nurse I paid $4,500 a month to take care of him. But she wasn't wearing a white uniform that night. No, she was wearing stilettos and holding a glass of champagne. She was laughing, pressing against him, kissing his neck, while he held her by the waist like they were celebrating something I was paying for. And around them, 5 or 6 other young people, all toasting, all shouting, all celebrating something I didn't understand, until one of them, a tall guy with an unbuttoned shirt, raised his glass and said to Tyler, "The best actor I know," and they all burst out laughing like it was the funniest joke in the world. I didn't move. I just stood there. The door open, the cold September night air hitting the back of my neck. For 6 months, I had believed every word, every tear, every medical report. For 6 months, I drove 3 hours every 2 weeks to visit him, to bring him fruit, to hug him, to tell him everything would be okay. For 6 months, I transferred $7,500 a month to his account, over $45,000 in total, all to maintain a lie that was now dancing in front of me, with a drink in his hand and a smile I had never seen before. My son was not paralyzed. He never was. And the worst part is, he wasn't alone in this scheme. Every person I thought was caring for him, every health professional who gave me reports, every tear he shed when I arrived, it was all part of a plan so well executed that even a man like me, who spent 40 years in construction closing deals and spotting lies, fell for it like an idiot. Because when it's your son, when it's your blood, you don't look for the lie, you look for hope. And they knew that, and they used it against me like a weapon. I built my company from nothing. Morrison Steel and Construction, 40 years of putting up buildings, negotiating contracts, sweating under the Texas sun while I laid rebar with my own hands. I started with a $500 welding truck after I came back from Vietnam in 1975. Today I bill over 12 millionths a year. I have 150 employees, 2 warehouses, trucks, and machinery. Everything I touch turns to money through hard work and discipline. But that night, standing in the doorway of that house, watching my son laugh with his glass of whiskey, I felt like the poorest man in the world, because all that money, all that power, all that success had done nothing to help me see what was right in front of me. A son who would rather steal from me than work. A son who saw my love as weakness and my trust as stupidity. Margaret, my wife, died exactly 1 year and 3 months ago. March 15th, 2023. Massive heart attack while she was making breakfast. She was gone in seconds, without a goodbye, without a chance to say the things we always think we'll have time to say later. I buried her with a broken heart, but also with the certainty that she had been a good woman, a woman who loved me, who raised our son with values, or so I thought. Now, standing in that living room, seeing what Tyler had done, I could only think one thing. Thank God Margaret was gone before she saw what our son became. Thank God she didn't have to see this betrayal, because this would have killed her all over again, and this time it would have been slower and more painful. What I saw that night wasn't just a betrayal. It was a setup, a stage play where every actor knew their part perfectly. And I was the only audience member who didn't know I was watching fiction. Samantha wasn't a nurse. The guys who were always there when I visited, the ones in white coats who spoke in medical terms, they weren't therapists. They were Tyler's friends, accomplices, and they all got their cut of my $7,500 a month. They were all splitting the loot while I worked 12-hour days thinking I was saving my son's life. It took me 5 seconds to process what I was seeing. 5 seconds where my brain tried to find an explanation, a miracle, a sudden recovery, something medical I didn't understand. But no, there was no explanation that made sense. There was only the truth. A truth so raw it hurt my bones and made my chest feel like it was caving in. My son had deceived me, and he had done it with a terrifying precision that showed months of planning. Because to lie like that, to orchestrate something like that, you have to be cold. You have to have ice in your veins. And I never thought my own blood could be so cold, so calculating, so heartless. Then Samantha saw me, she saw me, standing in the doorway like death itself. Her eyes went wide as saucers. She let out a choked scream that cut through the music like breaking glass. The party atmosphere shattered in that instant. Tyler, who had his back to me, stopped dancing. He froze completely still, as if time had stopped and someone had pressed pause on his entire existence. Then slowly, very slowly, he turned his head and saw me. Our eyes met across that room full of lies. And in that moment, in that exact second, I saw something in his eyes I will never forget until the day I die. I didn't see regret. I didn't see shame. I saw panic, pure, animalistic panic. The panic of a thief caught with his hands in the safe. The panic of a con artist whose mark has figured out the game. The glass in his hands started to shake. It shook so violently that the champagne spilled over the edges and onto his shirt. Tyler tried to say something. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out except a choked sound like a wounded animal. He tried to take a step towards me, but his legs didn't respond. Not because he was paralyzed, but because fear had paralyzed him completely. And then the glass fell. It slipped from his trembling fingers like his whole world was slipping away. It fell in what seemed like slow motion, and it shattered on the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the entire house like a gunshot. The music stopped. Someone hit the button. The silence that followed was so heavy, so oppressive, I felt like it was crushing me under its weight. All eyes were on me now. Tyler's friends, Samantha, all frozen like deer in headlights, as if they had just seen the Grim Reaper walk through their door. And maybe they had. Maybe in that moment, the Nathan who left his house 3 hours earlier, the Nathan who still believed in his son, died right there on that threshold. And another was born. One who no longer had room for forgiveness or second chances. To understand why it hurts so much, you need to know where I come from. You need to understand the man standing in that doorway, and why this betrayal cut deeper than any knife ever could. I was born in East Houston in 1956, where the water came once a week and the power went out every other day. My father was a steel worker who killed himself working 10 hours under the brutal Texas sun for $35 a day. My mother cleaned houses for rich families just to put food on our table. I was the oldest of 4 kids, which meant I learned responsibility before I learned to ride a bike. I learned from the age of 8 that nobody in this life gives you anything. If you want to eat, you work. If you want to study, you work. If you want to live with dignity and hold your head high, you work your fingers to the bone until they bleed. And that's exactly what I did, every single day of my life. At 19, I joined the Marines, did 2 tours in Vietnam between 1975 and 1977, came back with discipline hammered into my soul and a work ethic that would carry me for the rest of my life. I got a job at a steel fabrication shop, earning pennies, but I was smart. I watched the foreman, learned welding, project management, how to read blueprints like they were novels. And one day, I told the owner, "Let me run the night crew. I'll increase production by 30%. He gave me a chance because he saw something in me that even I didn't know was there. By 25, I had my own welding truck. By 30, my first shop. By 40, 2 warehouses and 50 employees. By 50, I was a millionaire, but not from luck or inheritance. From blood, sweat, and sacrificing everything. It wasn't luck, it was blood. It was not sleeping for weeks at a time. It was sacrificing birthdays, Christmases, Sundays with my family. It was watching my father die knowing I had achieved what he never could. what he never even dared to dream was possible for a kid from our neighborhood. And when Tyler was born on July 12th, 1989, when I held that baby in my arms for the first time, I swore I would teach him the same thing my father taught me: the value of hard work. Because a man who doesn't know how to work, who doesn't understand the dignity of earning his way in this world, isn't a man. He's a parasite. And I wasn't going to raise parasites. Not in my house. Not with my name. That's why I never gave Tyler anything easy. Ever. Not once in his entire life. He worked at my company, yes, but in the yard with the other employees, not in some cushy office. He earned $3,200 a month, same as any other steelworker with his experience level. He had a decent 2018 Ford F-150 that he bought with his own money. He lived in a 3-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood that I helped him rent, but the lease was in his name. He didn't lack anything, but he had no luxuries handed to him on a silver platter, and that drove him absolutely crazy. Dad, my friends go to Miami every month. They have BMWs and Audis, and I'm here moving steel beams like some common laborer, he would complain, his voice full of resentment that made my stomach turn. I always gave him the same answer, looking him straight in the eye with the seriousness of a man who had earned every dollar he possessed. When you build your own business, when you prove you can create something from nothing like I did, then you can travel wherever you want. But as long as you work for me, you live on what you earn. That's how the real world works. Margaret supported me in this philosophy. Well, most of the time. But there were quiet nights when we turned out the bedroom light, and she would whisper to me in the darkness, "Nate, maybe we should give him a little more. He's our only son. What if we're being too hard on him?" And I would stroke her cheek gently, feeling the softness of her skin, and say, "My love, if we give him everything now, he'll never learn to stand on his own 2 feet. It's better he struggles a little now and becomes strong later. Or do you want him to end up like those rich kids who are 40 years old and don't even know how to balance a checkbook?" She would sigh that deep sigh of a mother's heart, kiss me softly, and fall silent. She trusted me completely. She always trusted my judgment when it came to raising Tyler. I wish to God she hadn't, because maybe if she had pushed back harder, if she had insisted we spoil him just a little, maybe none of this would have happened. Tyler hated me for my discipline. He didn't say it directly to my face, but I saw it burning in his eyes like hot coals. I saw it in how he looked at me when I pulled up to the office in my new Silverado, while he was still driving his older F-150. I saw it in how he gritted his teeth when his college friends bragged about their trust funds and vacation houses while he had to say, "I can't afford that. I'm working for my living." I thought it was just passing resentment, the normal rebellion of a young man who wanted more than he had earned. I believed that in time he would understand my methods, that one day when he had children of his own, he would thank me for teaching him the value of hard work. I thought I was molding him into a man of character, but I was wrong, dead wrong. The resentment didn't pass like a storm cloud. It grew and festered and rotted inside him until it turned into something much worse, into a cold, calculated plan. A plan to take everything from me without working another honest day in his life. 4 months after we buried Margaret on that gray March morning, Tyler came to see me at the house. It was July the 15th, 2023. I remember the date because it was brutally hot, over 100 degrees, and he looked pale and drawn, with dark circles under his eyes like he hadn't slept in weeks. He told me he couldn't take living in Houston anymore, that every corner of the city reminded him of his mother, that every street held memories that were killing him slowly. He said he needed to leave, to start over somewhere new, where the ghosts of the past couldn't follow him. "Where would you go?" I asked him, genuinely concerned about his mental state. Grief does strange things to people, and I thought maybe a change of scenery would help him heal. "Galveston Bay," he said, his voice quiet and thoughtful. "It's peaceful there, away from all this. I could work remotely in sales for the company from there, handle some of our coastal projects, maybe develop some new business down that way." I thought about it for several long minutes. The idea had merit from a business standpoint, and if it helped my son deal with his grief, it seemed like the right thing to do. "All right," I finally said, "I'll help you get set up. Pay your rent for the first year while you get established, but after that, you support yourself completely." "Deal?" He agreed immediately, almost too quickly. He hugged me tight and said, with what seemed like genuine gratitude, "Thanks, Dad." I promise I won't disappoint you. I really think this is exactly what I need to get back on track." And I believed him. God almighty, how I believed every word. That came out of his lying mouth. Tyler moved to Galveston Bay 3 weeks later, on August 5th, 2023. It's a beautiful coastal city about 3 hours southeast of Houston, touristy and expensive, with million-dollar homes overlooking the Gulf of Mexico. I rented him a large house with a spectacular view of the bay for $20,500 a month, more than I really wanted to spend, but I thought it was temporary, just for 1 year while he got his emotional bearings back. I helped him pack all his belongings into a U-Haul truck. We carried boxes together like we used to when he was a kid helping me on job sites. We talked about what his new life would be like down by the water. He seemed excited, hopeful, more animated than I had seen him since Margaret's funeral. I was genuinely happy for him, thinking the change of scenery would do him good, that maybe away from all the painful memories in Houston, he would find peace and learn to value what he had. Maybe he would even find a nice girl and settle down. Give me some grandchildren to spoil in my old age. What an idiot I was. How completely blind I was to what was really happening. 3 months after he moved to Galveston Bay, on November 12th, 2023, I got the phone call that would change everything, or so I thought at the time, because in reality, that call didn't change anything at all. It only revealed what was already there, lurking beneath the surface like a cancer. The truth, the lie, the elaborate plan Tyler had been cooking up since the day he moved away from Houston. But I didn't know that. I only knew my son was in terrible trouble. And when a father hears his son is in trouble, when he hears genuine fear and pain in his boy's voice, he doesn't think rationally. He doesn't analyze or question. He just runs toward the danger, ready to do whatever it takes to save his child. And that's exactly what I did. I ran straight into the trap with my eyes closed, with my heart wide open, and with my wallet ready to pay whatever price they demanded. It was 2:17 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I looked at the clock, wondering who the hell would be calling at such an ungodly hour. The phone rang with that particular insistence that only comes with bad news, that urgent, desperate sound that makes your blood run cold before you even answer. I grabbed the phone from the nightstand, my heart already pounding. "Hello?" It was Tyler, but it wasn't his voice. Not the voice I knew. It was a moan, a broken cry that sounded like it was coming from the depths of hell itself. "Dad, please come. Please, I need you." I sat bolt upright in bed, suddenly wide awake. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. "What happened, son? What's wrong?" And then he told me, his voice choked with what sounded like genuine tears, real pain, real terror. "I had an accident, Dad. My truck flipped on Highway 45 coming back from Houston. I'm in the hospital right now. The doctor says, God, Dad, I can't move my legs." The world stopped spinning. Time froze. The words wouldn't come out of my mouth. All I could do was listen as my son continued, his voice breaking with what I believed was devastation. "Dad, the doctor says I'm paralyzed, from the waist down. They don't think I'll ever walk again." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach with a sledgehammer. My only son, my only child, the continuation of my bloodline, possibly crippled for life. Everything I had worked for, everything I had built, and my boy might never walk again. I got dressed in the dark, my hands shaking so badly I could barely button my shirt. I woke up my sister Patricia, called her landline until she answered, groggy and confused. "Patricia, it's Nathan. Tyler had an accident, a bad one. I need you to come with me to Galveston Bay right now." She didn't ask questions. That's the thing about family, real family, not the fake kind Tyler turned out to be. When there's an emergency, they just show up. She said she'd be at my house in 20 minutes, and she was there in 15. We drove those 3 hours in complete silence on the empty highway. It was one of those November nights that was unseasonably warm, the kind of weather that makes you think, maybe winter won't be so bad this year. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, my mind racing through all the possibilities, all the ways this could change everything. Patricia looked at me out of the corner of her eye every few minutes, but said nothing. She just breathed deeply and occasionally reached over to pat my shoulder. She knew there was nothing she could say that would make this better, so she just stayed close and let me process the nightmare in my own way. When we got to the hospital in Galveston at 5:30 a.m., a doctor was waiting for us in the emergency room. Dr. Kenneth Palmer, according to his name badge. He was a man in his 50s with graying hair and a professional demeanor that somehow managed to be both authoritative and compassionate. He took us to a small consultation room that smelled like disinfectant and despair. He showed us x-rays on a light board, pointing to different areas of Tyler's spine with a metal pointer. He talked to us about vertebrae and spinal cord compression, about irreversible damage and long-term prognosis, using medical terms that might as well have been spoken in a foreign language. All I could think was, my son is never going to walk again. My strong, healthy boy who used to run track in high school is going to spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair. And I broke down right there in front of that doctor. I put my face in my hands and sobbed like I hadn't cried since Margaret died. I cried for my son, for his future, for all the things he would never be able to do. Patricia rubbed my back and whispered that everything would be okay, but we both knew it wouldn't be. 2 days later, on November 14th, they let us take Tyler home from the hospital. He was sitting in a brand new wheelchair, the kind that cost $3,500 and looked like it belonged in a NASA facility. I paid for it without even asking the price, just handed over my credit card like money meant nothing compared to my son's comfort. Patricia pushed the wheelchair while I carried the bags of medication, pain pills, anti-inflammatories, muscle relaxants, enough pharmaceuticals to stock a small pharmacy. Tyler sat quietly with his head down, as if he was ashamed to be seen like this, ashamed to be dependent on others for the first time in his adult life. When we got to his house in Galveston Bay, I stopped short at the front entrance. The place had been completely transformed in just 2 days. There was a new wheelchair ramp made of polished steel, railings along every wall that gleamed under the afternoon sun, and the front door had been widened by at least a foot. Inside, the house looked like a state-of-the-art medical facility. There was an oxygen tank in the corner, monitoring equipment with blinking lights and digital displays, and a full hospital bed had been installed in what used to be the living room. Someone had converted this beautiful beach house into a rehabilitation center, and it had all happened in less than 48 hours. Who did all this work? I asked Tyler, genuinely impressed by the speed and quality of the modifications. He looked up at me with those eyes that used to melt my heart when he was a little boy, and said in a voice that was barely above a whisper, Dr. Palmer helped me find a rapid adaptation company. They work with insurance companies to get homes modified quickly for spinal injury patients. Dad, I don't want you to have to spend any more money on me than you already have. I knelt down beside his wheelchair and took his hand in mine, feeling how cold and fragile it seemed. Listen to me, son. I don't give a damn what any of this costs. Money is just paper. What matters is that you're alive and that you're going to be okay. We're going to get through this together, no matter what it takes. Tyler squeezed my hand and shed a single tear that rolled down his cheek like liquid silver. I wiped it away with my thumb, and in that moment, I would have given my life for him. I would have sold my company, my house, everything I owned, because that's what a father does when his child is suffering, and Tyler knew it. Oh God, did he know it. Then I heard footsteps coming down the stairs, and I turned to see a young man about 30 years old descending into the living room. He was wearing a crisp white medical coat over dark jeans and spotless sneakers. His hair was perfectly styled, and he had one of those professional smiles that looked like it had been practiced in front of a mirror. Good afternoon, Mr. Morrison. I'm David Newman, certified physical therapist and registered nurse. I'll be in charge of Tyler's daytime care and rehabilitation program. He extended his hand with the confidence of someone accustomed to dealing with worried family members. I shook it, noting his firm grip, but something about his eyes bothered me. They were too bright, too alert, like he was studying my every reaction and filing it away for later use. But I was tired, scared, and desperate to believe that someone competent would be taking care of my son. So I pushed my doubts aside and focused on the fact that Tyler would have professional care. Then she appeared at the top of the stairs, and I have to admit, she took my breath away. Samantha Brooks came down those steps like an angel of mercy, moving with the quiet grace of someone trained in patient care. She wore a complete white uniform, pants, blouse, comfortable walking shoes. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a professional ponytail, and she wore minimal makeup that somehow made her look both competent and caring. She was beautiful, I won't lie about that. But more than her appearance, there was something about her demeanor that immediately put me at ease. She looked to be in her late 20s, maybe early 30s, with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. Mr. Morrison, I'm Samantha Brooks. I'm a registered nurse specializing in spinal cord injury rehabilitation. I'll be with Tyler 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can rest assured that he'll receive the best possible care. Something in her tone, in the way she spoke with quiet authority and compassion, made me breathe easier for the first time since that phone call. She seemed like exactly the kind of person you'd want caring for someone you loved. Professional, but warm, competent, but caring. "Thank you," I said, and I meant it. I can't tell you how much it means to know that Tyler will be in good hands. She smiled with what looked like genuine warmth. "It's my pleasure, Mr. Morrison. Tyler is going to be an excellent patient. I can already tell he has the determination to make real progress in his recovery." God help me, I believed every word she said. I never imagined that this woman wasn't a nurse at all. She was an aspiring actress and model who had never set foot in a nursing school in her life. She was Tyler's girlfriend of 2 years, and she was about to give the performance of her lifetime, with me as the unwitting audience paying for the entire production. Patricia had remained silent through all these introductions, but I could see her watching everything with those sharp eyes of hers. She had stayed by the door with her arms crossed, looking at David, then at Samantha, then at Tyler, her face showing no emotion except careful analysis. I knew my sister better than anyone in this world. I had been her big brother for 65 years, and when Patricia made that particular face, it meant something didn't add up in her mind. I walked over to her and whispered quietly, "What is it? What's bothering you?" She shook her head and replied just as quietly, "Nothing specific. We'll talk about it later when we get home." But I didn't have time for her intuition or her suspicious nature. I had to organize everything, make sure my son had the absolute best care money could buy. So I let her comment slide and focused on what I thought were the important matters. That was my first major mistake, and it wouldn't be my last. Tyler asked me to stay that first night. "Dad, please don't leave me alone here. I'm scared. Everything feels different now, and I don't know how I'm going to handle this." His voice was small and vulnerable, like when he was a little boy afraid of thunderstorms. Of course, I agreed to stay. Patricia went to a hotel in town, and I took the guest room upstairs, but I couldn't sleep a wink. Every hour on the hour, I got up and quietly walked downstairs to check on Tyler, and every single time I looked into that makeshift hospital room, there was Samantha sitting in a chair beside his bed, taking his blood pressure, checking his temperature, writing detailed notes in a professional-looking notebook. She was so dedicated, so professional, so caring in everything she did. Once around 3 a.m., I found her gently adjusting his pillows while he slept. I tapped her on the shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for taking such good care of him." She turned and gave me that smile that belonged in a medical center brochure. "It's my job, Mr. Morrison, and besides, Tyler is a remarkable patient. He's handling this transition better than most people would." I felt a sense of calm wash over me for the first time since that phone call. I thought to myself, my son is in the best possible hands. These people really care about him. What a complete fool I was. The next morning, November 15th, Dr. Palmer arrived at the house carrying an expensive leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than most people make in a month. He greeted Tyler with the familiarity of an old friend, which I found reassuring. Then he asked to speak with me privately about Tyler's long-term care plan. We sat at the dining room table with its view of Galveston Bay sparkling in the morning sun. Dr. Palmer opened his briefcase and took out medical folders, x-ray films, and printed reports with the letterhead of a clinic I had never heard of, called the Gulf Coast Spinal Recovery Institute. "Mr. Morrison," he began in that serious, authoritative voice that doctors use when delivering life-changing news, "Tyler's injury is quite severe. We're dealing with compression fractures at the L4 and L5 vertebrae. He currently has about 50% sensation in his lower extremities, but he cannot support his own body weight or control his leg muscles." I listened with a heart that felt like it was made of lead, hanging on every word this man said about my son's future. He's going to need intensive physical therapy 5 days a week, permanent nursing care around the clock, specialized anti-inflammatory medications, and quite possibly surgical intervention within the next 6 months. The road to any kind of recovery is going to be long, expensive, and there are no guarantees. Then he asked the question that would seal my financial doom. "Mr. Morrison, are you prepared for the costs involved in giving Tyler the best possible chance at recovery?" I didn't hesitate for even a second. "Doctor, I don't give a damn what this costs. Do whatever is necessary. Hire whoever you need to hire. Buy whatever equipment he needs. If my son has even a 1% chance of improving his condition, I'll pay whatever it takes to give him that chance." Dr. Palmer nodded slowly, as if he had expected exactly that response from a loving father. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a detailed cost breakdown, printed on official-looking letterhead. I read through the numbers with growing dismay. 24-hour nursing care, Samantha. $4,500 per month. Physical therapy specialist, David. $2,000 per month. Specialized medications and supplements. $750 per month. Medical equipment and supplies, $250 per month. Total monthly cost, $7,500. That was more money than most families in America make in a month, but I was looking at it as an investment in my son's future. What I didn't understand at the time was that I was actually looking at the monthly budget for Tyler's luxury lifestyle, carefully disguised as medical expenses. "I'll transfer the money at the beginning of every month," I said without hesitation. "Whatever Tyler needs, he gets. Period." I signed a care contract right there at that dining room table without reading it thoroughly, without asking for a second opinion from another doctor, without doing any of the due diligence I would have insisted on for any business deal, because I wasn't thinking like a businessman. I was thinking like a desperate father. And desperate people don't make rational decisions. They just throw money at problems and hope for the best. What I couldn't have known at that moment, what I couldn't have imagined in my worst nightmares, was that every single word Dr. Palmer had spoken was a carefully constructed lie. Those x-rays showing spinal damage, they belonged to a different patient entirely. The Gulf Coast Spinal Recovery Institute, it existed only on letterhead that could be purchased online for $50. Dr. Kenneth Palmer himself had 2 malpractice suits pending against him and a history of selling falsified medical reports to insurance companies for $4,000 each. David Newman wasn't a licensed physical therapist or nurse. He was Tyler's college roommate, who worked part-time as a freelance graphic designer, and Samantha Brooks had never been within 100 miles of a nursing school. She was an aspiring model and actress who had been dating my son for over 2 years. The entire operation was an elaborate theater production, and I was the only audience member who didn't know I was watching a play. But the performance was so convincing, so professionally executed, that even a man like me, someone who had spent 40 years in business learning to spot con artists and fraudsters, fell for every single detail. Before I left Galveston Bay that afternoon to drive back to Houston, I went to Tyler's bedside for what I thought would be an encouraging goodbye. He was sitting in his wheelchair by the large window that overlooked the bay, staring out at the water with an expression of such profound sadness that it nearly broke my heart in half. I put my hands on his shoulders and felt how thin he seemed, how fragile. "You're going to get through this, son," I said with all the conviction I could muster. "I promise you that. We're going to fight this thing together, and we're going to win." Tyler turned to look at me, and his eyes were filled with tears that seemed absolutely genuine. He reached up and grabbed my hand with both of his, holding it like a lifeline. "Dad, I'm sorry for being such a burden on you. I know this is costing you a fortune, and I feel terrible about it. Maybe it would be better if I cut him off immediately, my voice firm and angry. "Don't you dare finish that sentence. Don't you ever let me hear you talk like that again. You are not a burden. You are my son, and I will take care of you until my last breath, no matter what it costs, no matter how long it takes." We hugged then, and I felt tears streaming down my face. Tyler cried too, his whole body shaking with what I believed was grief and fear about his future. Now, I know those tears were as fake as everything else about the situation, but at the time, they seemed like the most real thing in the world. Patricia was waiting for me outside by my truck, leaning against the driver's side door with that expression she gets when she's about to tell me something I don't want to hear. "Nathan," she said as I approached, "that nurse is awfully young and pretty to be working private duty cases. Don't you think it's strange that someone that attractive would want to spend 24 hours a day taking care of a paralyzed patient?" I felt anger flash through me like lightning. "Patricia, for God's sake, my son is lying in there destroyed, and you're standing out here making insinuations about his medical care because the nurse happens to be attractive? What exactly are you suggesting?" She held up her hands defensively. "I'm not suggesting anything specific. I just think something feels off about this whole situation." The house was modified too quickly, the staff seems too perfect, and the costs are enormous. Everything costs money when it's done right, I snapped back. I'd rather pay extra and know Tyler is getting the best care possible than try to cut corners and regret it later. Patricia said nothing more after that. She got in the truck silently, and we drove back to Houston with tension thick as fog between us. I thought she was being paranoid and jealous of my attention being focused on Tyler instead of family drama. She thought I was being a blind fool. We were both right, but I wouldn't realize that for another 6 months. I went back to my regular life in Houston, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every morning, I got up at 5 a.m. and went to the office, reviewed job sites, negotiated contracts with suppliers, supervised construction crews, but my mind was always 200 miles away in Galveston Bay. Every time my phone rang, my heart would race, thinking it might be an emergency call about Tyler's condition. Every night before going to bed, I would send him a text message. "How are you feeling tonight, son?" And he always replied with the same heartbreaking response. "Hanging in there, Dad. Fighting every day." Just 4 words that destroyed me emotionally every single time. 4 words that I now know were carefully calculated to keep the money flowing and the guilt building up inside me. I kept my promise about the money transfers. Every first of the month, like clockwork, I sent $7,500 to Tyler's account for his medical expenses. I never missed a payment, never complained about the amount, never asked for receipts or documentation. I just trusted that the money was being used to help my son recover from a devastating injury. What I didn't know was that Tyler had set up a group text message thread on his phone called Operation Dad that included Samantha, David, Andrew, another college friend who sometimes played a doctor, and 2 other accomplices I never even met. Every time I sent him a text saying I was coming to visit, Tyler would immediately message the group, code red, Dad arriving Saturday at noon, everyone in costume, hide all the party supplies, invalid mode activated. And they would all respond with laughing emojis and thumbs-up symbols, treating my love and concern for my son like it was some kind of hilarious game show they were winning every week. I couldn't visit Tyler every weekend because my construction company required constant attention. I had 150 employees depending on me for their paychecks, multi-million-dollar projects with strict deadlines, and client meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. So I settled into a pattern of visiting every 2 weeks, always on Saturday afternoons. But I always gave him advance notice, thinking I was being considerate by letting him mentally prepare for my visits. I would text him on Thursday, planning to drive down this Saturday around noon. How does that sound? And Tyler would respond with a voice message that sounded weak and grateful. "Thanks, Dad. I really look forward to seeing you. These weeks get pretty lonely down here." What I didn't understand was that I was giving him 48 hours to transform his party house back into a convincing medical facility. Those advance warnings allowed him to contact his accomplices, hide all evidence of his real lifestyle, and set up the props needed to maintain his elaborate deception. When I arrived every other Saturday, the scene was always perfectly staged. I would walk through the front door and find Tyler in his wheelchair by the window, looking out at the bay with a melancholy expression. Samantha would be beside him in her pristine white uniform, checking his vital signs or adjusting his medications. David would be at the dining room table, reviewing what appeared to be therapy schedules and progress reports. The house always smelled like a hospital, antiseptic and clean. There were medicine bottles arranged on the side tables, a heating blanket covering Tyler's legs, and medical equipment humming quietly in the background. Everything looked and felt exactly like what you'd expect in the home of someone recovering from a serious spinal injury. I would arrive carrying bags of fresh fruit from Houston, books I thought might interest him, vitamin supplements that I'd read could help with nerve regeneration. Tyler would always smile weakly and say, "Dad, you don't have to keep bringing me things. Just having you here is enough." But there was someone else in Galveston Bay who wasn't part of Tyler's elaborate deception. Someone who had no idea she was about to become the key to unraveling the entire conspiracy. My niece Ashley, Patricia's daughter, was 26 years old and worked as an accountant for a major shipping company in Galveston. She had been living there for 2 years, ever since graduating from Texas A&M with her finance degree. Every time I planned a visit to see Tyler, I would mention it to Patricia during our weekly phone calls. And Patricia, still harboring her suspicions about the whole situation, would always tell Ashley, Your Uncle Nathan is going to see Tyler this Saturday. Why don't you stop by and say hello to your cousin? Ashley was a good kid with a kind heart, so she would always make time to visit Tyler when I was in town. But like any considerate person, she would text him first. Hey cousin, Uncle Nathan is here. Mind if I stop by for a few minutes? This gave Tyler advance warning to make sure his fake medical setup was perfect for yet another family member. When Ashley would arrive, she would see exactly what I saw. Tyler in his wheelchair looking depressed, Samantha in her nurse uniform taking professional care of him, and David reviewing therapy schedules with serious concentration. Ashley fell for the deception completely, just like I did. She would hug Tyler, cry with him about how unfair life could be, and leave feeling terrible for her cousin's suffering. The performance was that convincing, that professionally executed. This pattern continued for months until Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Ashley had taken a sick day from work because of a mild stomach bug, and by afternoon she was feeling better, but bored. She decided to surprise Tyler with an unannounced visit, thinking it might cheer him up to have some unexpected company. She drove to his house around 3 p.m. and rang the doorbell. No one answered, but she could clearly hear music coming from inside. Not the soft therapeutic music you might expect in a recovery environment, but loud reggaeton with a heavy bass beat that seemed to shake the windows. She rang the bell again, more insistently. Still nothing. So she walked around to the side of the house and looked through the kitchen window. What she saw made her blood run cold. The dining room table was covered with beer bottles, glasses filled with ice, an open bag of expensive tortilla chips, and she could hear male laughter echoing from somewhere deeper in the house. This wasn't the sterile, quiet environment of a medical recovery facility. This was clearly a party. Ashley stood there frozen, not knowing what to think or do. Her mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe Tyler was having a good day. Maybe the medical team had decided some social interaction would be good for his mental health. But something felt terribly wrong about the whole scene. She decided to ring the doorbell repeatedly until someone answered. After about 30 seconds of constant ringing, the music suddenly shut off, leaving an eerie silence. 2 minutes later, Tyler opened the door in his wheelchair, but something was off about his appearance. His hair was messed up, he was slightly out of breath, and he looked nervous. Ashley! What a surprise. Sorry it took so long to answer. I was taking a nap, and the medication makes me sleep really deeply. She looked at him suspiciously. Really? I heard music playing when I got here. Tyler laughed, but it sounded forced and nervous. Oh yeah, David was here earlier cleaning up, and he had some music on to make the work go faster. He just left through the back door a few minutes ago. Ashley walked into the house and immediately started looking around with new eyes. Everything appeared normal on the surface. The medical equipment was in place, the hospital bed was made, the wheelchair ramps were there. But there were small details that didn't make sense. On the side table was a glass with ice cubes that were barely melted, suggesting someone had been drinking something cold very recently. The bag of chips she'd seen through the window was now in the kitchen trash, but she could see it was a $12 bag of imported snacks, not the kind of thing you'd expect to find in a medical facility. And then, partially hidden under the edge of the sofa, she spotted something that made her heart start racing. It was a woman's high-heeled shoe, bright red, expensive-looking, with a designer label she could see from across the room. It definitely wasn't the kind of practical, comfortable shoe that a professional nurse would wear during a 12-hour shift. Ashley said nothing about what she'd observed. She visited with Tyler for about half an hour, but she noticed he seemed unusually nervous and kept glancing toward the staircase as if he was worried about something upstairs. Every few minutes, he would wipe sweat from his forehead, despite the house being air-conditioned to a comfortable temperature. When she finally said goodbye and kissed him on the forehead, she told him, "Take care of yourself, cousin. I hope the therapy continues to go well." But as soon as she got to her car, she pulled out her phone and sent a text. Message to her mother. Mom, something really strange just happened at Tyler's house. I showed up without warning and heard party music and saw beer bottles. There was also a red high heel under the sofa that definitely doesn't belong to any nurse. I think something weird is going on here. Patricia received that message while she was grocery shopping in Houston. She read it twice, feeling a mix of vindication and dread washing over her. Her instincts had been right from the beginning, but she knew Nathan would never believe her without concrete proof. She immediately texted back, Don't say anything to your Uncle Nathan yet. I need you to keep watching Tyler, but be very careful. If I'm right about what's happening, this is much worse than we thought." Ashley agreed to become an unofficial spy, though she had no idea what she was really looking for or how devastating her discoveries would eventually become. From that day forward, Ashley began driving by Tyler's house at random times without warning, sometimes in the morning before work, sometimes during lunch breaks, sometimes in the evening after dinner. She started keeping a small notebook in her car to record anything unusual she observed, and what she began to see painted a picture that was completely different from the medical recovery story Tyler was selling to his father. Thursday, January 18th, 4:15 p.m. Red BMW convertible parked in Tyler's driveway. License plate reads TGH 421. Definitely not Tyler's truck or any medical vehicle. Saturday, January 20th, 11:30 p.m. Loud music coming from house. Colored party lights visible through windows. Multiple voices laughing. This is definitely not medical recovery activity. Monday, January 22nd, 2:45 p.m. Samantha Brooks exits house carrying 4 shopping bags from Bayshore Luxury Boutique. She's wearing designer jeans, expensive heels, and talking animatedly on her phone while laughing. Not exactly professional nurse behavior. Wednesday, January 24th, 10:08 a.m. Liquor delivery truck at front door. Driver carries in cases of expensive whiskey and champagne. Someone in civilian clothes, not medical uniform, signs for the delivery and tips the driver $50 cash. Ashley documented everything meticulously, taking photos when she could do so discreetly from her car. Each entry in her notebook painted a clearer picture of what was really happening in that house, and none of it had anything to do with medical recovery. But the most damaging evidence came on Friday night, February 9th, 2024. Ashley's shipping company was hosting their annual employee dinner at the Bayshore Grand Hotel in Galveston. She had dressed up in her best black cocktail dress and was enjoying a rare night out with her coworkers. After dinner, she excused herself to use the restroom. As she walked past the hotel's main ballroom, she heard familiar music, the same reggaeton beats she had heard coming from Tyler's house. The ballroom doors were slightly ajar, and curiosity got the better of her. She peeked through the crack between the doors, and what she saw made her feel like the ground was disappearing beneath her feet. There, in the center of a crowded dance floor, was Tyler, not in a wheelchair, not struggling to walk, not showing any signs of paralysis whatsoever. He was dancing energetically with a glass of champagne in his hand, moving his hips and legs with the rhythm like someone who had never been injured in his entire life. Pressed against him was Samantha, but she looked nothing like the professional nurse Ashley had met during family visits. She was wearing a tight red dress that clung to every curve of her body, stiletto heels that made her tower over most of the people around her, and jewelry that probably cost more than Ashley made in 6 months. Around them, she recognized David and Andrew, the supposed medical professionals, along with several other young people she didn't recognize. They were all dancing, drinking expensive alcohol, and celebrating something that was clearly being funded by Uncle Nathan's $7,500 monthly payments. Ashley's hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone. She knew this was the moment Patricia had been waiting for, the concrete proof that would finally open Uncle Nathan's eyes to what was really happening. She managed to take 4 clear photographs from different angles. In the first, Tyler's face was clearly visible as he laughed and raised his champagne glass. In the second, Samantha was kissing him passionately while wrapped around his perfectly functional body. In the third, David was visible in the background, raising his beer bottle in what appeared to be a toast. The fourth photo captured the entire group celebrating together like they didn't have a care in the world. Proof. Undeniable, irrefutable proof that Tyler Morrison had never been paralyzed and was using his father's love and money to fund a luxury lifestyle while pretending to be disabled. Ashley quickly put her phone away and hurried back to her company's dinner, but she couldn't concentrate on anything for the rest of the evening. Her mind kept replaying what she had just witnessed, and she felt physically sick thinking about Uncle Nathan driving down from Houston every 2 weeks, bringing fruit and vitamins for his recovering son. As soon as she got home that night, she called Patricia, even though it was past midnight. "Mom, I have it. I have the photos. Tyler was dancing at a hotel party with Samantha and all his friends. He's not paralyzed, Mom. He never was. Uncle Nathan has been paying for Tyler to live like a millionaire while thinking he was paying for medical care. On the other end of the phone, Patricia felt her heart break for her brother, while simultaneously feeling vindicated that her instincts had been correct from the very beginning. "Send me the photos right now," Patricia said in a voice that was deadly calm. It's time Nathan learned the truth about his son. Ashley immediately sent all 4 photographs, along with pages of notes from her 2 weeks of surveillance. Patricia spent the rest of that night staring at the images on her phone, zooming in to make sure there was no possible misinterpretation, no room for doubt or denial. There wasn't. Tyler was clearly visible in every photo, standing and moving normally, celebrating with expensive alcohol, and surrounded by people who were all part of his elaborate deception. The evidence was overwhelming and heartbreaking. Patricia knew that showing these photos to Nathan would destroy him emotionally. She knew it would shatter his faith in his son and probably change him forever as a person. But she also knew that allowing the lies to continue would be even worse, that Tyler would keep bleeding his father dry until there was nothing left. The truth always hurts, but lies kill slowly and painfully. Saturday morning, February 10th, Patricia woke up early and drove to Nathan's house in Houston without calling first. She had the photos loaded on her phone, and she had mentally prepared herself for what was about to become one of the most difficult conversations of her life. When Nathan answered his front door, he immediately knew from Patricia's expression that something terrible was about to happen. "Patricia, what's wrong? Is everything okay?" "Nathan, I need to talk to you about Tyler. And I need you to sit down before I show you what Ashley discovered last night." That conversation would change everything. Within hours, Nathan would finally understand the magnitude of his son's betrayal. And by evening, Tyler's carefully constructed empire of lies would begin its complete and total collapse. Patricia arrived at my house at 8:30 a.m. on February 10th, 2024. I was having my morning coffee on the back patio, reading the newspaper and thinking about driving down to see Tyler later that week. It was one of those beautiful Houston winter mornings that makes you think spring might come early. When I heard the doorbell, I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the front door and immediately knew from Patricia's face that my peaceful morning was about to end forever. "Nathan, we need to talk about Tyler, right now." Her voice had that tone she used when we were kids, and she was about to tell our parents something I had done wrong, serious, determined, and slightly sad. I led her into the living room, and she sat down heavily on the couch like she was carrying a tremendous weight. She pulled out her phone and placed it on the coffee table between us. "Before I show you what's on this phone, I need you to understand that I love you, and I'm doing this because I have to, not because I want to." My heart started racing. "Patricia, you're scaring me. What's going on?" "Ashley took some pictures last night at a hotel in Galveston. Pictures of Tyler." She paused and looked me directly in the eyes. "Nathan, your son has never been paralyzed, not for one single day." She turned her phone toward me, and I saw a photograph that made the entire world stop spinning. Tyler was in the center of a crowded dance floor, standing perfectly upright with a champagne glass raised above his head. He was laughing, moving to music, surrounded by people who were clearly celebrating. His legs worked perfectly. His body moved normally. There was no wheelchair anywhere in sight. That can't be." My voice came out as a whisper. Patricia swiped to the next photo. Tyler and Samantha kissing passionately, her arms wrapped around his completely functional body, while she wore an evening dress that probably cost $2,000. Another swipe. David and Andrew in the background, both holding drinks and toasting something, both clearly enjoying an expensive party funded by my monthly payments. I felt something inside my chest shatter into a million pieces. Not my heart, something deeper. My faith in family, in blood bonds, in the fundamental belief that your children might disappoint you, but they would never deliberately destroy you. "When?" was the only word I could manage. "Last night." Ashley was at a company dinner at the Bayshore Grand Hotel. She saw Tyler dancing and took these photos. "Nathan, he's been lying to you for 4 months. Everything. The accident, the paralysis, the medical bills. It's all been fake." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my backyard where I had taught Tyler to throw a baseball when he was 7 years old. That little boy who used to run to greet me when I came home from work had grown up to become someone who could look me in the eye and lie about being paralyzed while stealing my money to fund his luxury lifestyle. "How long have you known?" I asked without turning around. I suspected from the very beginning. Something about the whole situation felt wrong, but I didn't have proof until now. I thought about every visit I had made to Galveston Bay. Every tear Tyler had shed when I arrived. Every time he had told me he loved me and was grateful for my support. All of it had been theater, a performance designed to manipulate my emotions and keep the money flowing. $45,000, 4 months of payments at $7,500 per month. Money I had earned with 40 years of brutal construction work. Money I had saved for my retirement. Money I thought was helping my son recover from a devastating injury. All of it had gone to fun parties, expensive clothes, luxury vacations, and the salaries of actors pretending to be medical professionals. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the emotional manipulation, the way Tyler had weaponized my love for him against me, the way he had watched me cry about his condition while secretly planning his next party. "I need to see him," I said finally. "Today. Right now." Patricia nodded. "I figured you would. Do you want me to come with you?" "No, this is something I need to handle alone." I called Arthur Reyes, the private investigator I had used for business situations over the years. Within an hour, he confirmed everything Ashley had discovered and provided additional evidence that made Tyler's deception even more elaborate than I had imagined. Bank records showing Tyler had spent $5,000 at luxury restaurants in the past month. Credit card receipts for designer clothes, expensive jewelry for Samantha, and weekend trips to Austin and Miami. Video footage from a beach bar in South Padre Island showing Tyler dancing shirtless with a beer in each hand, shouting to his friends about how easy it was to fool his stupid old man. Arthur rode with me to Galveston Bay that afternoon, but he stayed in the truck when I used my key to enter Tyler's house unannounced. The scene I found inside was exactly what you read at the beginning of this story. Tyler dancing with Samantha, David, and Andrew, celebrating with expensive alcohol, all of them living like millionaires on my dime, while I worked 12-hour days thinking I was saving my son's life. The confrontation was swift and final. I didn't scream or throw things or make threats. I simply told Tyler I knew everything, showed him the evidence Arthur had gathered, and informed him that his accounts were frozen and his eviction notice would be served the next morning. The look in his eyes when he realized his empire of lies had collapsed was something I will never forget. Pure panic, followed by desperate attempts to explain or justify what he had done, followed by rage when he understood that no explanation would save him. Today, 6 months later, Tyler works at an appliance store in Galveston for $800 a month. Samantha left him the day his money stopped flowing. David and Andrew won't return his calls. Dr. Palmer is in county jail awaiting trial for insurance fraud. And me? I sleep peacefully every night, knowing I chose dignity over blood, justice over family loyalty. Some people say I was too harsh, that I should have forgiven my son because family is everything. But family isn't everything. Integrity is everything. Self-respect is everything. And no amount of shared DNA gives anyone the right to destroy your trust and steal your life savings while laughing about it behind your back. If this story taught you anything, I hope it taught you that dignity is not negotiable. Never. Thank you for listening. See you in the next story.